Hi everyone. Today we're going to work on our Rwanda Genocide and Reconciliation notes. So we are finishing up what we started. You should have the Tutsi filled in, the Hutu, the Belgians, xenophobia definition and reflection, as well as the causes of the Rwanda Genocide. So today we're working on reconciliation. What does this mean to you? And the definition, as well as we're going to take a look at three different stories and portraits. So at this time, I would like you to take a moment and think about, what does reconciliation mean to you? What does that word mean? If you don't know what it means, take a moment and take your best educated guess as to what you think it means. Break it down, look at the prefix. Take a moment and write that down, and you can pause the video to do that. Okay, so hopefully you've done that. Now, in a moment here, I'm going to show you the definition of reconciliation. You can see how close you were to it. And then after we talk about the definition, we're going to go into and analyze three different portraits. There are going to be questions with each portrait that you are to answer before or after, depending on what portrait it is, as we go through this presentation. So make sure that you have a pencil and that you're actively writing and participating as we go. So the definition of reconciliation is the act of two people or groups becoming friendly again after an argument or disagreement. It's fair to say that the Rwandan genocide was a massive argument or disagreement. And the reason why we're talking about reconciliation is because in Rwanda, after the genocide had taken place, there was a public programming to reconcile the Hutus and the Tutsis for the crimes that they had committed during that time. So please write this down in the definition box for reconciliation. So this photograph project that we're analyzing here came from the New York Times Magazine, and it says, last year the photographer Peter Hugo went to southern Rwanda 2 decades after nearly 1 million people were killed during the country's genocide, and captured a series of unlikely, almost unthinkable portraits. The people who agreed to be photographed are part of a continuing national effort toward reconciliation and worked closely with AMI, a nonprofit organization. In AMI's program, small groups of Hutus and Tutsis are counseled over many months, culminating in the perpetrator's formal request for forgiveness. The following are some of those photos. So the next slide is going to be portrait number 1. So please be ready to write down your response. So the first question here is, what do you think the relationship is of the two men in this picture? So take a look at their faces, at their body language, how they're standing, how close they are to each other, what emotions do they seem to be displaying on their faces. So take a moment and respond to this question on portrait number 1. All right, so here is the response of the two men. The perpetrator on the left says, I asked him, and this is him, the survivor, I asked him for forgiveness because his brother was killed in my presence. He asked me why I pleaded guilty, and I replied that I did it as someone who witnessed this crime but who was unable to save anybody. It was the order from authorities. I let him know who the killers were, and the killers also asked him for pardon. Pardon means forgiveness. So the survivor here says, sometimes justice does not give someone a satisfactory answer. Cases are subject to corruption. But when it comes to forgiveness willingly granted, one is satisfied once and for all. When someone is full of anger, he can lose his mind. But when I granted forgiveness, I felt my mind at rest. So you can ask yourself if you were correct about this relationship. Maybe some of you said they look like, I don't know, possibly friends or brothers in how they're standing. So make sure that you have something written on portrait number 1. So now we're going to move on to portrait number 2. So the question here is, what emotions do you see in this picture? Take a look at both people, their body language, what they're showing us through their faces. So answer that right now. Take a moment. If you need to pause the video, you can. Just write down emotions that you see in this picture from both people. And so here's their story. Perpetrator, Jean-Pierre. My conscience was not quiet, and when I would see her, I was very ashamed. After being trained about unity and reconciliation, I went to her house and asked for forgiveness. Then I shook her hand. So far, we are on good terms. And this is the survivor. He killed my father and 3 brothers. He did these killings with other people, but he came alone to me and asked for pardon. He and a group of other offenders who had been in prison helped me build a house with a covered roof. I was afraid of him. Now I have granted him pardon. Things have become normal, and in my mind, I feel clear. So again, take a look at the picture and what you wrote down for the emotions. Were you accurate? Was it similar to the stories? Remember, he says that he was ashamed. Ask yourself if he looks ashamed in the picture. And she talks about how her mind feels clear. Does she look as though her mind is clear? Those are the things you should be asking yourself. So the final picture, and this is portrait number 3, is this one. So it's going to start with a story, and there's going to be a question after. This one is very hard emotionally to listen to. So here it is. Perpetrator, the man, and the survivor is the woman here. I damaged and looted her property. I spent 9.5 years in jail. I had been educated to know good from evil before being released. And when I came home, I thought it would be good to approach the person to whom I did evil deeds and ask her for forgiveness. I told her that I would stand by her with all the means at my disposal. My own father was involved in killing her children. When I learned that my parent had behaved wickedly, for that I profoundly begged her pardon too. And this is her story, her survivor story. My husband was hiding, and men hunted him down and killed him on a Tuesday. The following Tuesday they came back and killed my 2 sons. I was hoping that my daughters would be saved, but then they took them to my husband's village and killed them and threw them in the latrine. I was not able to remove them from that hole. I knelt down and prayed for them, along with my younger brother, and covered the latrine with dirt. The reason I granted pardon is because I realized that I would never get back the beloved ones I had lost. I could not live a lonely life. I wondered, if I was ill, who was going to stay by my bedside? And if I was in trouble and cried for help, who was going to rescue me? I preferred to grant pardon. So if you're not sure what a latrine is, it's a public toilet. It's a bathroom. Um, so the question that you are answering for yourself is, did she have to pardon him? So did she have to grant him forgiveness? And could you grant forgiveness to someone who had done that to your family? And explain. So take a moment and write your response down for portrait 3. When you're done with all of these reflections, make sure that you have the notes finished and completed. It should be both sides now of this worksheet. It will be due soon. It's good for reviewing for the test that will come up. And at this point, once you've completed all of these things, you can go ahead and work on your project, your places project. That will also be due very shortly. So use your time wisely. If you need any of these notes, they can be found on Schoology as well if you need to review or finish up anything on this worksheet. Good luck.